Ethan Cole sat alone in the silent hall. His hands were steady, but inside his chest, his heart beat like a drum. He had seen many battles, too many for one lifetime, and each had left a mark. His body carried scars, and his mind carried more. People whispered that Ethan was dangerous, that his anger could not be controlled. The council had called him in, not as a hero, but as a man who could not be trusted. He knew it. He could feel their eyes on him, cold and sharp like blades. The great doors opened, and a young woman walked in. Her name was Claire Morgan. She did not look afraid, though she knew who Ethan was. She wore a simple dark dress, and her long hair fell across her shoulders. Her eyes were calm, almost steady enough to quiet the storm inside him. But Ethan did not trust calmness. He'd lived too long among lies and shadows. He waited for her to bow, to show weakness, but she did not. She stood tall, her chin raised, her gaze meeting his without fear. A man from the council spoke with a heavy voice. He said that Claire had been chosen for Ethan. She was to help him, to keep him steady, to be by his side. Ethan almost laughed. He thought it was a cruel trick. What use did he have for kindness? What use did he have for a stranger who was pushed into his life by men who wanted him under control? He looked at Claire and expected her to break. He thought she would lower her eyes, hide her face, or ask him what he wanted from her. Instead, she spoke first. Her voice was clear, not soft, not trembling. She said she had not come to serve him like a tool. She said she was there because she had chosen not to run from her duty. Ethan frowned. He had not heard words like that in a long time. People around him had always wanted something, always offered lies dressed as truth. Claire's words were not soft. They were firm, almost like stone. The council left them alone, the echo of their steps fading down the long hall. Ethan and Claire stood there, two strangers forced into a strange bond. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he watched her. He wanted to scare her, to test her will, to see if she would crack. He asked her why she was not afraid. She answered without moving her gaze. She said fear was a chain, and she did not wear chains for anyone. That struck Ethan. He turned away, walking across the hall with heavy steps. His boots echoed on the floor. He could feel her presence behind him, silent but strong. He had fought wars, watched men fall, seen cities burn. Yet he could not understand this woman who did not bend. A moment he felt something strange, not anger, not rage, something different. A small spark of respect, though he would never admit it aloud. Night came, and Ethan was given his quarters. Claire was given her own space nearby, not far but not too close. He sat by the window, staring out at the city lights that burned against the darkness. His mind would not rest. Right. He thought about her words. He thought about her eyes that did not look away. He thought about how she had refused to lower herself, even when everyone else in his life had either feared him or tried to use him. He clenched his fists. He did not want to think about her. He told himself she was just another trick by the council. But the truth was sharp in his chest. She was different. He did not know what would come, but he knew one thing. Claire Morgan was not going to break. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt that maybe he would not be left alone with his anger. Maybe, just maybe, something was about to change. Ethan woke early the next day, his body restless from a night filled with broken dreams. He had dreamed of the battlefield again, fire and smoke, the sound of men screaming. He rose from the bed and moved to the window, staring at the first light of the morning. He wanted silence, but his thoughts would not allow him peace. He clenched his jaw, trying to push the memories away. Then he heard a knock at the door. It was Claire. She stood there without fear, holding a tray with bread and water. She placed it on the table and looked at him, as if waiting for his reaction. Ethan gave her a sharp glance. He expected her to bow or look down, but she met his eyes the same way she had yesterday. She told him he should eat. He asked her if the council had ordered her to watch him like a guard. She answered no. She said she was there to help him, but only if he allowed it. Her words made him uneasy. Ethan was used to people obeying or fearing him. Claire did neither. He sat down and tore a piece of bread, chewing slowly, his gaze never leaving her. He asked her why she had not run away. Many people had left him before, some out of fear, some out of hate. Claire said she had seen enough pain in her life to know when someone was drowning in it. She said she did not run from storms. Ethan was silent for a long time after that. Later that day, Ethan was called to meet with the council again. Claire followed him into the hall, her steps calm beside his heavy stride. The council members watched them with cold eyes. One of them asked Ethan how he found her presence. Ethan shrugged and said nothing. Another asked Claire if she felt safe. She answered yes, and she did not lower her voice. She said Ethan was not a monster, only a man who had been left to fight too many battles alone. The words made Ethan's chest tighten. He wanted to snap at her for speaking so boldly, but at the same time, something inside him stirred. The council dismissed them, but the air in the hall was heavy. On the way back, Ethan asked her why she had defended him. She said truth should not be hidden. He told her that she knew nothing about him. She said she knew enough that he was still alive when many others were not, and that meant he carried more weight than anyone should. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to test her. He spoke harshly, waiting for her to falter, walked away from her, thinking she would not follow. He stayed silent for hours, thinking she would grow tired. But Claire stayed. She did not chase him, but she did not leave either. When he spoke bitterly, she answered calmly. When he turned his back, she remained near enough for him to know he was not alone. One evening, Ethan lost his patience. He asked her why she refused to do what the council wanted. He told her they had placed her in his life to calm him, yet she refused to play the part of a servant. Claire looked at him, her eyes steady in the dim light. She said she was not a tool, not an object to be used for obedience. She said if he wanted her to stay, it would not be through commands, but through choice. Ethan stared at her, unable to answer. That night, he walked the long corridor alone, his thoughts heavy. He realized that no one had ever spoken to him like that. Every voice in his past had been filled with either fear or control. Claire's voice was different. She had refused to bend. She had refused to undress her dignity. She had chosen to face him as an equal, not as a shadow under his name. For the first time, Ethan wondered if the council had made a mistake. They had given him Claire to control him, but instead, she was teaching him something he did not want to learn, that control was nothing compared to respect. The thought shook him, and though he tried to dismiss it, he knew the truth was already growing in his heart. The days grew heavier for Ethan, as the whispers around the city reached his ears. Soldiers spoke of him as a man who could break at any moment, a storm waiting to destroy everything in his path. He knew the council still doubted him. They had given him Claire to calm the fire inside him, but they did not trust her either. Ethan carried this weight like he carried every scar on his body, silent and bitter. Yet through it all, Claire stayed near him, never too close, but never too far. One afternoon, Ethan walked through the training yard, watching the younger men spar. Their blades clashed, and their shouts filled the air. Some looked at him with awe, others with fear, but none dared step closer. He stood apart, a figure that no one wanted to challenge. Claire appeared at the edge of the yard, her eyes steady on him. She walked toward him, unafraid of the silence that followed her steps. She asked him why he stood there without joining them. Ethan replied that he had fought enough for 10 lifetimes. She told him that fighting did not always mean swinging a blade. Sometimes it meant facing the battles inside. Her words unsettled him. He turned away, but her voice lingered in his thoughts. Later that night, when the halls were empty and the torches flickered, Ethan found himself speaking without meaning to. He told her of one battle where his closest friend had fallen. He described the smoke, the heat, the cries, and how he had survived while others had not. His voice was low, almost breaking, but Claire did not interrupt. She listened until his words stopped, and she told him he was not wrong to carry the memory, but he was wrong to carry it alone. The next morning, news spread that enemies of the council were moving in the shadows. A group of men planned to strike against the city, hoping to use Ethan's name to stir fear and chaos. Rumors spread that Ethan might even join them, that his anger would turn him against his own people. The council called him once again, their eyes sharp with suspicion. They asked if he would betray them. Ethan's jaw tightened as he denied it, but he could see they did not believe him. Only Claire spoke in his defense. She told them Ethan had stood against storms greater than any of them could imagine, and he had not broken. Her words silenced the hall, but the doubt in their eyes remained. That evening, as Ethan walked through the lower streets, a group of armed men surrounded him. They tried to provoke him, calling him a weapon of destruction, a beast the council could not chain. They said he should join them and turn his rage against those who used him. For a moment, the fire in Ethan's chest burned hot. His fists tightened, and he wanted to strike, to release all the pain he carried. But before he could move, Claire stepped beside him. She did not carry a weapon, yet her presence was enough. She looked at the men and said Ethan was not their tool. She said he was not theirs to control. The men hesitated, their courage fading under her steady voice. Ethan saw them step back and scatter into the night. After they left, Ethan stood still, his heart racing. He looked at Claire, trying to understand why she had not run when danger came close. She simply told him she would not leave him to face shadows alone. For the first time in years, Ethan felt his anger ease, just for a moment. He realized her strength did not come from steel or armor, but from her will. She had chosen to stand beside him even when the world doubted him. That night he sat in silence, watching her from across the room as she rested by the fire. He thought about the battles he had fought, the enemies he had faced, and the friends he had lost. None of them had stayed as she did. Claire had seen his fury, his bitterness, and his scars, yet she did not turn away. Ethan understood something new then. She was not here to break him or to serve him. She was here because she believed he could still be more than the storm inside him. The thought unsettled him, but it also gave him a spark of something he thought he had lost forever: hope. The council grew restless. Rumors spread faster than truth, and Ethan's name carried weight in every corner of the city. Some called him a danger, others whispered he might become a leader. The council feared both. They summoned him again, demanding he prove his loyalty. Ethan walked into the hall with heavy steps, Claire beside him. Their presence filled the room with tension. He knew the council had not brought him here for peace. They wanted a display of control. The leader of the council stood and declared that Ethan must show his obedience. The man's voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and commanding. He pointed to Claire and said Ethan must bend her will as a sign of loyalty. The order struck the hall like a blade. Silence followed, heavy and cold. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his jaw locked tight. He looked at Claire, standing calm but unyielding. She met his gaze, and in her eyes there was no fear, only trust. Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered every battle, every order that had broken men under his command. He remembered the screams of soldiers who obeyed without question and paid with their lives. Now the council wanted him to do the same to Claire, to break her spirit for their own power. The thought sickened him. He clenched his fists, the old fire rising inside. But when he looked at her again, he saw something else. He saw the strength that had kept him from falling deeper into rage, saw the hand that had pulled him back from the edge when no one else dared. The council demanded he act. Ethan turned to them, his voice hard but steady. He told them he would not harm her. He said their power was not his chain. The council grew angry, their voices overlapping, accusing him of betrayal. But Claire stepped forward before Ethan could say more. She lifted her hand and held it out to him. Her gesture was not of weakness, but of defiance. She offered not surrender, but solidarity. The hall was silent as everyone watched. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. Taking her hand meant standing against the council. It meant breaking the chains they had wrapped around him. He looked at her hand, steady in the air between them, then at the men who waited to see if he would bend. Slowly, he reached forward. His rough hand closed around hers, and he held it tight. The moment burned brighter than any victory he had known. Gasps filled the hall. The council's faces turned pale with fury. Ethan did not release her hand. He spoke loudly so all could hear, said strength was not found in crushing others, but in standing together. He said he had fought wars for men who used fear as a weapon, and he would not do so again. His voice was not filled with rage, but with certainty, and it carried through the chamber like thunder. The council tried to silence him, but their words fell weak. The soldiers who stood guard exchanged glances, some with doubt, others with respect. They had seen what the council had not. Ethan was not breaking. He was becoming something stronger than before. Claire stood beside him, her hand still in his, her face calm but resolute. The image of them together was more powerful than any command. Ethan led Claire out of the hall as the council shouted behind them. The great doors closed, cutting off their voices, but but their anger lingered in the air. Ethan walked through the corridors with his head high, his hand still holding hers. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. The council would not forgive defiance, yet he felt no regret. For the first time he had chosen his own way, not the one forced upon him. That night, as the city whispered of what had happened, Ethan sat by the fire with Claire beside him. He told her he did not know what would come, but he knew he would not walk it alone. She answered simply that he never had to. Her hand remained in his, and for the first time in many years, Ethan felt not just the weight of his scars, but the strength of hope growing inside him. The news of Ethan's defiance spread quickly through the city. Some whispered in fear, saying he had turned against the council. Others spoke in admiration, calling him a man who had broken chains that no one else dared to fight. Soldiers and workers alike told the story of how he had taken Claire's hand in front of the council, not as a command, but as a choice. The city was restless, caught between fear and hope. Ethan felt the weight of every eye upon him. He knew the council would not forgive what he had done, expected them to send guards or assassins, yet he did not waver. Claire stood beside him, her presence steady like a shield that no weapon could pierce. Each night, they sat by the fire, speaking little, but their silence carried more meaning than words. She had become the anchor he had never thought he needed. One morning, a group of young soldiers approached Ethan in the training yard. They asked him if it was true that he had stood against the council. He looked at them carefully and told them it was. They asked him why. Ethan answered with honesty. He said he was tired of wars, fought for men who sat behind walls, and gave orders without care for the lives they destroyed. He said strength was not meant for fear, but for protecting those who had none. His words struck deep into their hearts, and some of them bowed their heads in respect. The council grew more desperate. They spread lies through the streets, saying Ethan wanted to bring chaos, that he wanted to rule with violence. But every lie was weakened by the truth people had seen with their own eyes. Ethan had not lifted his hand in anger. He had not tried to command Claire or anyone else. He had only chosen to stand beside her. The image of his hand holding hers became a story carried by every tongue more powerful than the council's commands. One evening, the council called a gathering in the great square. They meant to show their power and to crush Ethan in front of the people. Guards filled the square and torches burned in every corner. The leader of the council declared that Ethan was a traitor. He said Ethan had betrayed the city by refusing to obey. The crowd listened in silence, but their eyes were not filled with fear. They were waiting to see what Ethan would say. Ethan stepped forward, Claire at his side. His voice was steady, carrying across the square. He said he had fought for the city when others had hidden. He said he had given his blood and his soul to battles that should never have been fought. He told them he was not a traitor, but he would not be a weapon for men who cared nothing for honor. He lifted Claire's hand for all to see, and said that true strength was not in breaking others, but in standing with them. The crowd stirred, their silence breaking into shouts of support. The council tried to silence the people, but the voices only grew louder. Soldiers who had once guarded the council now looked to Ethan with respect. The people had chosen who they believed in. The power of fear was broken, and the council's words fell empty. Ethan knew the fight was not finished, but he also knew a change had begun. People no longer saw him as a danger. They saw him as a man who had chosen hope over rage. That night, Ethan and Claire walked together through the streets. The city felt different, alive with a fire that was not born of anger, but of belief. Children followed them with curious eyes, and workers nodded in silent respect. Ethan felt the weight on his shoulders, but it was no longer the weight of chains. It was the weight of trust. He knew he could not fail them. When they reached the edge of the city walls, Ethan looked out at the dark horizon. He thought of the battles he had fought, the men he had lost, and the rage that had almost consumed him. Then he looked at Claire, her hand still in his, her eyes steady as ever. He understood that his path was no longer about war. It was about building something stronger than fear. For the first time in his life, Ethan Cole was not only a soldier, he was a leader, and he was not alone. Claire had chosen to stand beside him, and together they would face whatever came next.